Hi, welcome back to the 50 Shades of Blonde show. I'm Missy Day.
And Jill Branson.
And with us today, we have someone very special. We have Vicki Kemker with Upside Business Solutions. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be
We're
here.
excited to have you on. I'm anxious to hear all of your story.
Well, thank you. I've heard very much about this show, so I'm looking forward to being able to share with you and your group.
Good, awesome.
Yay.
And because it's Tiara Monday, she's wearing a tiara too.
Yes, I am.
So Vicki, tell us, well, there's a lot of questions we have for you, but so start off by telling us, so what are you doing now? You're kind of like going in a different direction, I heard.
I am. So I was in the corporate world for many, many years and realized along the way that there's been a couple pieces that are missing that I wanted to bring into through my business to help business owners to understand what the company culture looks like and how they can take small steps to be able to put systems in place as well as improve their company culture and have a culture of good employees that are doing things on purpose, not just a bunch of employees hired to collect a paycheck.
Oh,
Yeah, big difference. So both of us have a background in corporate and kind of like started our own businesses. So one thing, that we've talked about that I'd like you to elaborate a little bit more on. So I find in business coaching with entrepreneurs, small business owners, that when you ask a question, what plan do you have in place? The answer is usually
None. Plan? What's a plan? That's a pipe dream.
right. Mhm.
exactly.
Yeah.
So where do you come in that scenario? What's the first thing you would do?
So it depends on where their biggest pain point is. How I can help businesses immediately is if they're looking to hire an employee and they don't have a job description. If they create a job description that shows what they really need to do, as well as has some essential skills and characteristics that they need to have in that role, it allows that employee relationship to start off on the right foot. So you have an interview, they accept it, they now have a job description, so they allowed to have accountability. And there's
Right.
no surprises of, I need you to do this because it's all in the job description. So it allows for transparency. So those are some of the quickest ways that a business owner can see a difference in their business is having job descriptions. And a lot of times it is because they're hiring a new employee and they want to make sure they're starting off on the right foot.
And I would kind of think in this climate that we have now, for companies, that would be a really quick way for a company to get into trouble if they didn't have a job description, especially if you're
That's
looking to
right.
fire somebody.
Yeah, and that's really where having a job description comes into play, is if you have something that in conjunction with company values. So if you have company values, you now can hire, fire, manage, and reward based on those company values. And that along with the job description, you're now able to say, here's what you're doing, and again, here's the accountability, and then you can start to see the progression of the employees enjoying what they're doing because they now know that that's what they are signed up on for, and there should be little surprises.
Right. I know, I don't know where they're at now because I'm not in corporate anymore, and I don't really get into your piece for what I do now in my business, but I know when I was in corporate, they were starting to phase out. Like we went from having like quarterly reviews, and then we went to 6 months, then it was a year.
Oh.
And I was thinking kind of like the same thing. If they're starting to, do companies still do that? Performance reviews? I mean, if they're not, they should, right?
Right. Well,
Yeah.
so there's two schools of thought on the performance reviews. Is number one, are they having them at all? And some of them are not because they don't know what they need to be doing. But really, the performance should be continuous. They should be having those conversations of, hey, you're exceeding our expectations, you're not meeting our expectations, when those triggers happen, so that there are no surprises. Because if you save it to the annual review, it becomes just a process and not something that is
Right.
is informative along the way where that employee can truly know where that bar is and are they meeting the bar, or what can they do to improve it? Do they need more training? Is it a personality? What do they need to do to be able to meet those expectations?
Do you ever just have them say, hey, you need to just have a meeting with them once a month or every 2 months so that the employee can just come in and say, hey, I've got some ideas, or this would, I would feel so much better if we had this, and this, rather than you telling them what to do. Let them share how they think they could help the business.
Yeah, and that really depends on the culture of the company. There's a lot of cultures that that's not a welcome comment. And if you have company values that say, yes, we care about our employees, here's what we do, here's what we encourage those conversations, those are when the people feel like they can truly voice their concern or their, what they can suggest that might be able to improve in the organization. It really depends on how comfortable they are with either their manager or the owner on whether that conversation takes place. And that's culture. And if they don't like their culture, there are things that they can do to be able to take steps to make the culture in alignment more with their why, the business owner's why, or even what their company values are.
Okay, that makes sense.
What would you say I know there's a lot of companies right now that are have been around for a long time, and they're now trying to adopt the philosophy like Zappos, Intel, Google, those kind of corporations, and when they're meeting a lot of resistance with the employees. So what is something that you would suggest that they can do to kind of like bring everybody more together when there's a culture shift like that?
In order to have a culture shift, if they don't have buy-in from the management and the leadership, there's not going to be a culture change, and they will know that. So if they can start before even the announcement, is start having those leaders start leading those company values, start having them live and breathe it and have conversations with it. And then once they can see that shift, then they can introduce it and say, by the way, for the past 2 months, 3 months, we've been making sure that this is in alignment with this. So, what our company values fun. I hope you've been able to see that we've been incorporating some more fun into it, so they can see that it's been lived by the leadership team, and not just all of a sudden going, oh, we had a 2-day leadership, and now all of a sudden we're going to make all these changes, and they're just going, yeah, no, we've seen this before. So, in order for that change, that shift to truly take place, it's got to be lived and breathed for several months prior to even introducing it to the team.
Well, and I have to say that I worked for a company that they used to do that a lot. They would have, they had these big ideas, and they'd put you into a 2-day training or something like that, and then poof, it was gone within a month or 2 months or whatever. So they wasted money by having us there, flying us to wherever it was to go to this, and then they never followed up.
Yeah, well, they need to fix you because they think it's that they're the employees are the ones that need to be fixed. But the reality is they're looking at the mirror, so they're looking at the leadership team going, well, they're not doing this, they're not doing that. So if they're not doing it, they're not leading by example. So if they're not leading by example, why should I have to? And the threat of being fired really is not a motivator. It's really something that they're just going to get the absenteeism, the tardiness, the job not meeting. They're just kind of just doing their job instead of, putting their passion into it, because it's really going to not for a lot of them, a lot of those employees.
And when they care about their employer, they show up, they do all the things they're supposed to because they want to make their employer proud, and they want them to succeed. So.
And they've bought into what the company's doing, and they can feel it. Again, we're living, breathing. We feel these things, and we feel when things are being done in alignment with our values, and we know when they're not being in alignment with our values. And that's the other thing is, if that company you're with doesn't have the same company values or core values, you may be there for a short term, but that's not going to be a long-term opportunity, because that's going to end up having conflict.
Right.
And one thing or one or the other is going to happen. You're going to get fired, or you're going to walk away, because that's just, it takes too much energy to be in that position versus just like, life is supposed to be easy. We are the ones that make it difficult by putting everything else, expectations and other things on top of it. So when it's not easy, usually it's not the right fit for that position.
Right. And I would say probably, and have enough, faith in yourself to do something different. I know sometimes I question, we've talked about this before, if the previous company I was with, if they hadn't left, I would probably still be there, as much as I hate to say that, especially as a business coach. But sometimes people get so comfortable in their comfort zone, and they stay at places they really shouldn't, because it's like it sucks the life out of you.
Right. And a lot of times, on the flip side, the leadership sees it too, and they're kind of in that conflict. So when the time comes, it's really probably no surprise. And for both sides, it could be a sigh of relief of, okay, now what do I get to do now? And that's the blessing I'm in now is, what do I get to do to be able to do things that make me happy and, the hard work that is for me and my family.
So I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to know how they can get a hold of you. Her information at the bottom of the screen. But tell us just who your target market is and how they can get a hold of you.
Okay. So my target market is really any business, well, anywhere from 5 to probably 50 employees is right now the sweet spot that I'm in. If an employer's looking to hire, if they realize that their company value, they don't have company values, if it's written on a wall, if it's in a handbook, how do they bring those to life? So those are things that I can help a business owner with. And my website is upsidebusinesssolutions.com. And my phone number is 702-551-2316.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for
thank
coming
you.
on the
Thank
show.
you. It was
a
We
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, Vicki Kemker again from Upside Business Solutions. Stay tuned for our next segment.